It's 4:30 a.m. in Finglas, April 3rd, 2022. James Whelan, 29, is moving through the neighborhood with at least one other man. He is armed and on his way to carry out a petrol bomb attack on a property connected to Mr. Flashy, the man he once worked under, but who had since become his rival. It wasn't long ago that Whelan had been one of Flashy's most trusted men, a senior member of the Gucci Gang, a Finglas-based criminal organization with deep connections to the Kinahan Cartel. But Whelan had broken away, forming his own group. His decision to go solo wasn't taken lightly, and Flashy's crew saw it as a direct betrayal. For months, their rivalry had been growing increasingly violent. It started with robberies and assaults, but quickly escalated. Whelan's associates had been involved in a brutal attack on one of Flashy's men, stealing his high-end designer watch on a Dublin bus. Flashy's crew retaliated with a severe beating of a young lad linked to Whelan. From there, things spiraled out of control. By the start of 2022, the violence had gone far beyond personal attacks. Whelan's crew attempted to bomb a house, but they targeted the wrong property, nearly killing an innocent family. And now, just in the past 48 hours, the situation has exploded once again. On Friday night, an innocent relative of Whelan's had been targeted when gunmen opened fire on their home. The next day, Whelan's men retaliated, shooting at a house in Deanstown Avenue, believed to be connected to Flashy's crew. In the early hours of Sunday morning, Whelan was taking matters into his own hands, but what he didn't know was that his plan had already been exposed. Somewhere along the way, a member of his own crew had tipped off Flashy's gang. Authorities would later state that Flashy's men had advanced warning that Whelan was coming, likely an hour or two before the attack. As Whelan and his associate moved through the streets, an armed man was already waiting. A gunshot was fired. A bullet struck Whelan in the chest. Some sources suggest Whelan may have returned fire, but if he did, it wasn't enough to stop the ambush. By the time emergency services arrived, Whelan was already dead.
The 29-year-old was found yesterday morning on a footpath in Deanstown Avenue with a single gunshot wound, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Gardaí are now investigating the murder, which is believed to be connected to an ongoing feud between two gangs in the area. That rivalry emerged in Finglas in recent years, but has been simmering in recent months and has also played out on social media. Gardaí at Finglas Garda Station met yesterday evening to determine their next moves in this murder investigation as they work to trace the last steps of James Whelan. The scene was closed off for a technical examination and a post-mortem was carried out, details of which aren't being made public for operational reasons.
This was the first gangland murder in over a year, and within hours, social media was flooded with taunts and threats. One post from Flashy's side mocked Whelan's death, reading, "What did them bullets taste like, James?" Whelan's own associates quickly vowed revenge, promising, "We will finish this for you, bro, once and for all." James Whelan was born in Dublin's North Inner City. As a child, his family moved to Finglas, a working-class area in North Dublin that had become a hub for drug dealing and gangland feuds. Unlike most of the young criminals in Finglas, Whelan was not a local. He was seen as an outsider, someone who hadn't grown up in the same circles as the other teenagers getting involved in crime. Rather than trying to fit in, Whelan aligned himself with a different crew, one led by Trevor Byrne, a senior figure in Dublin's underworld. Byrne was not just a local gangster, he was a major player, directly linked to the Kinahan Cartel and involved in armed robbery, serious firearms offences, and kidnappings. Under Byrne's guidance, he was introduced to a higher level of criminality, moving beyond small-time dealing and into more serious operations. Whelan's ambitions became clear early on. He didn't want to be a low-level dealer forever. He wanted money, power, and influence, and under Byrne's wing, he began working his way up the ranks. His first major brush with law enforcement came in June 2011, raided his home and seized nearly €30,000 in cash. At just 18 years old, Whelan was already handling significant amounts of drug money. This wasn't the income of a street dealer. This was the kind of money that came from running an operation and managing other dealers below him. Whelan had become one of the key players within Byrne's crew. He was responsible for moving drugs, collecting payments, and enforcing control over certain areas. As the years went on, he expanded his network, built stronger connections, and became a well-known figure in Finglas's criminal underworld. However, things changed when Trevor Byrne was arrested and sentenced to long-term prison time. With his mentor locked away, a power struggle emerged in Finglas. New leaders were stepping up, alliances were shifting, and Whelan had to decide his next move. For years, Whelan had worked with Mr. Flashy. Flashy had taken over after Byrne's imprisonment and had become one of the most notorious young gangsters in Dublin, running a highly profitable drug empire in Finglas. At first, Whelan operated as one of Flashy's senior men, but in 2019, as his ambitions grew, he made the bold decision to break away from Flashy's crew and start his own operation. Whelan's used e-scooters and electric bikes to distribute across his network. His dealers, many of them young, inexperienced criminals, began using these vehicles to deliver crack cocaine and cannabis across Finglas. This system had several advantages. Scooters were fast, cheap, and hard to track. They could navigate through small alleyways, making it easier to evade authorities. Whelan's scooter gang quickly became one of the most successful drug networks in Finglas. He was making a fortune, and as his operation grew, so did his reputation. But his success came at a cost. When he broke away from the Gucci gang, it made him a serious threat to Mr. Flashy and his crew. Almost immediately, Whelan became a target. Flashy's crew publicly branded Whelan a rat, spreading social media taunts and threats. They warned that he was going to be killed. Whelan, however, refused to back down. The rivalry quickly turned violent. Soon, grenade attacks, kidnappings, and shootings followed as both sides escalated their war. The situation became so extreme that innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Despite the growing danger, Whelan refused to stop. He continued his public defiance of Flashy. James Whelan's murder sent shockwaves through Finglas, but his enemies wasted no time in celebrating his death. Within hours, social media was flooded with taunts, threats, and mockery. One post, allegedly from a rival gang member, asked, "What did them bullets taste like, James?" It was a direct insult, a final humiliation. If anyone thought Whelan's death would bring an end to the feud, they were wrong. Less than a month after the murder, the violence escalated again, this time targeting Whelan's grieving family. In an act of sheer brutality, Flashy's crew firebombed the home of Whelan's mother. The attack nearly killed her, forcing her to flee for her life. What made this feud different from the gangland wars of the past was the role of social media. This wasn't just about back-alley shootings and whispered threats. This was public, constant, and impossible to de-escalate. Flashy's gang posted their victories, mocking Whelan in death. This feud was never just about drugs or money. It was about power, reputation, and control. It was about young criminals refusing to be disrespected. For the young men involved in these feuds, walking away is rarely an option. Once a gang member is publicly humiliated, the pressure to respond is overwhelming. A reputation can mean everything in the criminal underworld. If you back down, you are seen as weak.